It is Monday, June 14th, 2021. My name is Jim Vessel. Welcome to Competitive Corner. Today, I am once again joined by Alex McDougall, my co-host. Alex, how are you?
I'm doing great.
We have a very exciting, lots of exciting topics today. We're going to be talking about the ACO results. Obviously, that's a big thing, and I want to talk a lot about kind of what we should take away from those results. And then we're also going to talk about the GW Rules Pack that was released today. And just a bunch of drama. Actually, today's going to be a full of drama day because I have some drama, which I've never spoken about publicly, that I'll be airing because I was falsely attacked and ganged up on by some members of various internet communities. So if you guys like me spilling the tea, today is the episode for you.
I'm curious as to how that happens since you don't go to any events.
Well,
how are you causing drama from a distance?
Well, the thing about this drama is that it's 2 years old, and someone decided to bring it up, to dig up old drama and try to throw me under the bus. But I have receipts, my friend. I have receipts, so we're going to be deep diving into that a little bit, and it actually has to do with the GW Rules Pack, which we'll be talking about later. Just a few announcements, guys, before we get going. This show is brought to you by Deployment Zone TV. Deployment Zone.tv is basically the Netflix of Warhammer. So go check it out. It's got a ton of different Warhammer content from myself, Play on Tabletop, Winter's SEO, a bunch of other content creators, podcasts, battle reports, all sorts of stuff. It's a great kind of content repository. And every fourth show, we actually do this show exclusively on deploymentzone.tv. So next week's show will actually be exclusive to them and will not be on the regular YouTube channel. We also do a Q&A at the end of every show. So to get a question on, really, really simple. You can leave a comment on today's show. So in the comment below, if you're watching this in the future, you can join the DZTV Discord by joining Deployment Zone TV. You can join the Duplicity Paint Discord, which is linked down below, or you can ask it live on the show. So if you guys are interested in checking out the show live, that's the best way to do it. For those of you listening to this on podcasts, we'll be taking viewer questions live, so that we're not crazy. Just a quick other announcement. So we had there's been a lot of requests on the Death Guard painting video that will be going live this Wednesday. I announced it today on my Instagram and on the YouTube channel's schedule. So this Wednesday, 6 p.m., the Death Guard painting video that everyone has been harassing me for is finally going live. Please, I do apologize for taking so long. Everyone, you guys have to understand I have a full-time job and I have a full-time party boy, frat boy lifestyle. So between those things and all the streaming and all the commission painting I'm doing right now, sometimes it's hard to sit down for 3 or 4 hours to edit YouTube videos, and the videos take quite a while to edit. All the footage has been filmed. I'm just in the editing stage of this. And then last thing, this week on Politics and Plastic, there has been a lot of discussion on sexism in the hobby, misogyny in the hobby. And so this week's topic is sexism and simping. And I have Tanya Gates, the War Mistress, on to talk about that subject, and it's actually something that's been kind of going, there's some recent written articles by various publications about why there aren't women in wargaming, harassment, all sorts of stuff like that. So we're going to deep dive into that whole topic and try to really have a good, long, nuanced discussion on this topic, because I think there is a lot of bad takes, a lot of misinformation, and just a lot of assumptions about everything, and a lot of, I think, on both sides, victimization and victim complex, and then a lot of people that are legitimately victimized. And so I really want to get into that, and that's going to be Thursday's topic, so 6 p.m. Pacific. So with that said, let's get into the episode. Alex, how's your week? What's new with you?
Not much. I've got some sisters models sitting on my left that I'm going to be painting up and converting into Tyranid models.
Can you explain that to us? Because that doesn't make sense.
Everything can be corrupted.
Okay.
Can consume everything. So more involved going to probably be another Broodlord. I might play them as sisters every once in a while, just for a change of pace. I do like the army; it's very cool. But yeah, just mostly doing some hobby projects because I've painted all my Tyranids in GSC.
That's awesome. And I just realized I don't have my headphones on, so let me put them on. Otherwise, you guys might be hearing an echo. And thankfully, because we are now streaming from Discord, this will not completely destroy the... Oh, they can't hear Alex. That's weird.
No, it's not.
That
You
is
did the
weird.
thing again. You did the thing again.
No. Hold on, guys. Alex, can you talk now?
Yep, I'm
Alright.
talking. Anybody, please type in chat to let us know. I'm really quiet.
Let me know if...
Okay, there we go. Looks like people are saying it's good
Okay,
now.
it's fixed. So, the streak continues.
Yep.
One sec, though, Alex, before you speak further. Let me just switch you to my... Welcome to the... There's a kitty now on camera, which is cute. All right, Alex, can you give me a little noise?
Yep, for sure.
All right, how's that chat? Can you guys hear Alex?
They're
Okay.
saying it's good.
So, all right, Alex, can you explain? I asked Alex what he's been up to this weekend, and Alex, can you repeat your answer to our lovely audience?
Yeah, sure. I am converting sisters into Tyranids because everything is for the hive mind.
And what do
turning-
these conversions entail? Like, what are you gonna actually do to them when you say convert? Because that sounds kind of loose.
Oh man, it's so much cat hair. I'm pretty chill with my conversions. It's going to be like probably a head swap. Morven Val's big ass spear is going to probably become like a big sickle scythe with scything talons. And I'll probably put maybe like a Tyranid leg instead of hers busting through like under her cloak. So it's more Gene Stealer cult conversion than it is Tyranid conversion. It's going to be like somewhat still mechanical.
So she's gonna be like a secret broodlord of some kind.
Yeah, like a patriarch.
Nice.
God, cat.
I have been working on, not that anyone asked, or not that you asked, but I'm going to tell you anyways. I've been working on some noise marines. So here's one holding up. This is actually one I gave him an icon of Exo. So he's got this big old school metal Slanesh banner on. And I used a Lord Eidolon model for my champion from 30k. He's got a Blastmaster. So the Sonic Blasters are 3D printed from Shapeways from Pop Goes the Monkey. And the backpacks, the Sonic backpacks are resin from Cromlech. And this is actually something I'm going to talk about later when we get to ACO, because one of the things that we've learned, or you will soon learn from the ACO pack, is that obviously all the models need to be Games Workshop. And so we're going to talk about whether or not units like my Noise Marines, which I've now converted using 3D parts, because and the actual, like, I'm actually using the Space Marine kit. I bought a brand new Space Marine kit in plastic to incorporate and to kind of to merge into those bits so they look up to date, because the current Noise Marine bits are very inadequate and old in metal. I actually have some of the old Noise Marine bits in metal still, and I obviously didn't want to mess with Finecast. Plus, the Noise Marine bits were all out of stock, and I have a BC League that starts tomorrow where I'm running Noise Marines, so I needed these models ASAP, and we're going to talk a little bit about the modeling policy in the Games Workshop pack. But before we get to that, let's talk ACO. So, congratulations to Brad Chester for winning the event, and congratulations to everyone in the top 8. Especially congratulations to Richard Siegler, taking Tau all the way to 3rd place, I believe, which I think many people would have said could not be done. But we did see a top 8 with 50% of the field using Drukhari or Drukhari-ish stuff. Like, I know Sean Nathan's list has a lot of Drukhari, including the best parts of Drukhari. So, first of all, what is your thoughts on the results? And yeah, I know you said you made some predictions last week and you want to talk about that.
My predictions were great. I was like bang on. I said 6 of 10 in the top 10 was going to be Drukhari, and that was correct. I said Art of War was going to win it, and that was correct. And I said the person who's probably going to have a run to potentially take it away from them is Sean Naden, and he made it in the top 8. And also, everyone from Art of War was in top 20, which I also said. So, no dramas over here.
Yeah, so in future predictions, Alex will predict that water is wet, and
yeah, they weren't the hardest predictions to make.
And that the sun will rise tomorrow, like, as far as like very hard predictions to make. So congratulations to Alex McDougall. Now, one of the things that we talked about on this last Thursday's Best Overall show was how I thought the ACO made a huge mistake in not adopting the new FAQ. And I didn't get a chance to talk to you about it because I think at the time there was still a lot of I don't know if they'd finalized that decision or what, but what do you think of the fact that ACO, which is kind of the first super major of the season, didn't with I think there was probably 3 weeks to go until the event. They decided not to adopt the FAQ. Do you think that was the right move, or what are your thoughts on that?
No, that was definitely the wrong move. The community wants to move fast. We always want to be pushing forward to what is modern. So playing a stale meta is really weird. And also, people are just sick of Drukhari, and they didn't want to have to deal with that. And I don't think it's really too much of a change where people were going to like, oh my god, I can't change my list in time. Like, it was 3 weeks out. Most of the Drukhari lists changed by like a couple models. Like, it's not that hard for people to adapt to that or have those models painted. So yeah, I'm not really sure why they didn't adopt it.
Yeah. Do you think there should be some sort of like what would you say would be too fast or too little time to adopt a FAQ?
1 week? I think 2 weeks is plenty.
Right.
Like, if you've got an army that's like mostly ready to go, and then an FAQ comes out that isn't like completely earth-shattering, which none of these FAQs were, I think 2 weeks is enough to like get your army ready. I think most people in 2 weeks can probably like minimum standard paint up like 20 models. That's like 3 or 4 models a day, and then they can just change their list to what they need it to be.
Yeah, I agree. I think I do think it was a big mistake. And the main reason I think it's a big mistake is because I think ultimately, and again, we don't need to get into a huge talk about it because I went into length about it on Thursday's Best Overall Show with Daniel Smith from Brohammer. We had a really good long discussion on it. But at the end of the day, I agree with you, which is think about what your players want. And I bet you if they had polled when that FAQ came out, I bet you if they had polled the players at ACO, the majority of players would have wanted the FAQ, including the competitive players, because no one wants to be playing it in a stale meta, right?
Yeah.
So I think even
the Drukhari players.
Yeah,
I think even the Drukhari players have been like, yeah, let's go for it.
Well, and that's what I was gonna say. So even if the Drukhari players didn't want it, that's still only like 10% of the field, maybe, right? But I think a lot of those players at the highest level of competitiveness, they do want the latest FAQ, as far as I'm concerned. The other thing is like, I look at the Chaos players who got the Warp Time nerf, but I bet you I bet you most Chaos players would rather play with the Warp Time nerf and against the new Drukhari than the old Drukhari and not Warp Time nerf. Like I'll take my chances in that like environment a lot more than having to face the oppression of a billion liquefiers, which we saw fairly heavily in Brad Chester's list. So what did you think of Brad's list? Winning list. Surprisingly, very few raiders.
Honestly, I would have to take a look at what Brad was running. I made an assumption with a lot of these lists that they were going to be like pretty bog standard for what it was. I know he was running, what was it, 18 liquefiers or something?
Yeah, so he had I think 4 or 5 units of racks with double liquefier, and then 2 units of grotesques with 3 liquefiers each. So there's a lot of liquefiers in that list.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at what these Drukhari lists can do, and it kind of shows you why it needed to be nerfed and why it's not going to like sewer the list. Like they'll just pivot to something else that's very good, not quite as busted as liquefiers, but a couple Hellions for speed, Succubus, Rex, Grotesques, Raider.
I think he only had 1 raider in his list, which was a surprise.
No, he had 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, he had 6.
Okay,
they're all at the bottom in a different.
I must have. I was like that seemed weird to me, but yeah, I must have missed it.
Because the game that he played against Nick for the finals was pretty one-sided, and I think he went first and went super aggressive. And man, it's raider on raider combat. Like every once in a while, you're just gonna have 2 raider shots that kills your opponent's raiders, and the game is in a really bad shape from then on.
Yeah, and let's talk about that. One of the things that I think was brought to attention for a lot of players was the terrain at ACO. There was a question about it in the left for us to discuss it, and obviously there's a question in chat as well about it. So did you get a chance to look at the terrain sets, and what did you think of kind of the overall terrain layout and kind of density, I guess?
I mean, it's very similar to what LVO was. Like, it's all the same terrain. But as far as the layout is concerned, I didn't like some of the layout for LVO, and I didn't like some of the layouts here. Talking to the players, like I got to talk to obviously my team, like Art of War, and then I got to talk to Seth, Oster, and Anthony Vanilla, and they all said like some tables were ass and some tables were solid, and it was really like you just kind of hope for the good ones. I think a better level of consistency. I think what they did with the LVO top 100 tables, where they were like suited to the mission, is what probably should have started happening. I mean, I think it's just what should happen everywhere, but whatever.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I personally think that the terrain was a big miss. From the tables that I saw, it seemed quite light compared to what it seems as far as like, maybe not quite as heavy as the WTC. I think the WTC in a lot of ways is a little bit too much, especially the heavy table terrain. But for me, it felt like, and you made a very good point. The terrain was like LVO in 2019, which I actually think is a big issue, given that we're not playing 8th edition anymore. There's no magic. There's a lot of magic boxes that weren't magic anymore. They're just boxes that you can't go into. And the biggest thing that is really curious to me is that it's not like Frontline doesn't have enough terrain. So they only had to furnish 120 plus something tables. They have 500 plus tables of terrain for LVO. So they could have easily just brought like 50% more terrain. So like maybe brought enough terrain for like 150 tables, or sorry, 170 tables, and then taken that extra terrain and just added it to the existing tables. So the excuse that like FLG couldn't get caught up, they couldn't make all that new terrain, it doesn't hold water at all. They literally own all that terrain. And, they, as far as I'm concerned, they should know better as far as, they're going to run these big super majors, right? And they're going to try to set a standard for what the competitive scene is going to be. Like a lot of people follow FLG as kind of a bit of a gold standard for terrain. And the other thing is, and this is something that I've talked about at length in the past, which is if you're a TO and you cannot have enough tape, like your tournament should be as large as you can make it, where you can support the tables with the proper terrain set. So if you're going to run 256 man tournament, you should be able to provide good, solid terrain for 256 boards or 128 boards or whatever. If you can't do that, then don't run a 256 man tournament. Run a 200 person man or a 180 man or whatever, right? But FLG chose to run that 256 event and that was their own choice. They chose not to bring the right terrain, and they chose also not to update their terrain in the 2 years they've had since we've had fucking tournaments. So for me, it is actually a huge kind of, I guess, black eye on the event that, and again, I'm not saying the terrain was bad, but I bet you, if you look at, say, I don't know what the top table looked like, but I bet you it was not anything close to the kind of table where you can hide 6 raiders. Like those models are tall. They got a lot of spike units, and maybe that's a good thing, but I would hate to see what the AdMech's going to do on the next iteration. I think the way that those tables were even set up, there wasn't a lot of a lot of the terrain was very, like, I guess I want to say 2-dimensional from or 1-dimensional, I guess, where like there wasn't a lot of L's. It was mostly boxes and straight line kind of walls, which meant it's quite easy to get angles on things. You can't really kind of hide things around corners. So, some of the terrain sets that I saw had like big buildings in the middle that you could see right through. And some had, just those like those weird like rocky wall things like that maybe holds 2 raiders behind it. It's really
useless.
Yeah. And so for me, I think the terrain was actually a big issue. Now, one thing that also has been brought up, I guess that's my final thoughts on it, but I definitely don't think Games Workshop did a great job FLG did a great job with the terrain. And I do hope that they take that feedback into light, into future events.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's no LGT, but
yeah, I mean,
we're always looking.
Hopefully, we're
looking
past.
For the best, and FLG says they're the best, so prove it. Continue to prove that you are the premier destination for tournaments.
Yeah, and one thing that I did want to also bring up is that Brad Chester is a playtester. So good luck. So like, I will say like best, like he's a very good player. And I actually literally had this conversation on Thursday's show before I even knew Brad Chester was going to win. I said, Brad Chester is an incredibly good player. And I don't think that the fact that he's a playtester really affects his tournament results, right? I think what it affects is that, you know, he's able to get a drop on maybe buying certain units before other people if he knows that they're going to be good. But outside of that, when it comes to the actual events, I think he's winning those events on his skill level. But with that said, do you think it would ever leave a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth that playtesters are winning events? Like, do you think there is something like to be said for that, or there should be some sort of like, I don't know, moratorium on playtesters playing events? Like, what do you think of that whole dynamic? Because I know personally, it doesn't really bother me that much personally, but I could see where a lot of players might think that it gives them an advantage.
I mean, they get to see ahead into the meta, and that's kind of the only advantage they have. Like, they still have to play the same stuff as everyone else. And the only time I think that I would say that it was an unfair advantage is if we see a book come out and they just immediately have like the army ready to go. And I'm like, okay, well then, like, I'll say it's way different. Like, I would say current AdMech is substantially different than how it was played in the past. So if somebody was to show up at an event with like exactly the like whatever 40 Vanguard, 40 Rangers, like all painted ready to go, almost nobody owned 80 Horde Skitarii before now. So if they've got that like on lock on the day the tournaments allow AdMech, I would say that's a little suspect. But we're like, what, 3.5 months deep in Drukhari? Like he just has that list. That's whatever.
Yeah, not to spread rumors, but I did hear a rumor today from a fairly reliable source that Brad is currently getting an orc army commissioned. And there's a comment in chat that Chester has a fully painted orc armor in the book kits. And I'll tell you in chat, he probably will. Because I did hear someone tell me that he's getting an orc army commissioned. So, I mean, that's neither here nor there. At the end of the day, though, like, most orc players have basically just about everything anyways. Speaking of orcs, yeah, go ahead.
The best stuff is not out yet.
Yeah. That's
like,
true.
The best stuff that's going to be the meta for the orc army, as far as I can tell, because I am not a playtester, but I have access to a couple and I can talk about and I'm friends with, and they will sometimes give me little snippets here and there. A lot of the best stuff from orcs is doesn't even have a model we can purchase yet. Yeah. So we're all stuck in this.
You hear it here first, guys. Orcs are the new meta. Orcs are the new Dark Eldar. Go buy them now. Start converting your beast nagas. Get that green stuff on those muscles and make them even chunky. But speaking of orcs, Alex, we did see a preview of new orc boys, which I was actually very surprised. So I wasn't necessarily surprised because I thought we should be getting new orc boys. I was actually very surprised we didn't get new orc boys with the reveals, and I'm pleasantly surprised. But it's weird to me that they're releasing two very similar orc infantry units basically at the same time. Like, do you think that's... Yeah, what do you think of that? And have you seen the New York boys, like the preview of that they showed just a single shooter boy?
They showed that now, because they also show the one I saw was in the Gaunt's Ghost.
Yeah, so they've now done a reveal on the war. They did like a faction focus, like basically an Here We Go article on the orcs today, and they actually revealed the new orc boys because I guess the cat's out of the bag. So they showed a picture of the of a new shooter boy from basically the back the Gaunt's Ghost box, the one that everyone was looking at, and yeah, so it is confirmed now. They have confirmed officially that there is a new orc boy set coming, and obviously they talked about the big white squig shark riding dude with a, I'm not quite sure, but the article talks about that as well. So that's obviously going to be a kit. I heard there's probably going to be a new truck, and then probably 1 or 2 more Beast Naga kits, I presume, including the well, we haven't seen the full reveal of the squig rider dudes outside of that original preview video, so it sounds like there will be a few more kits. And we also got confirmation that the box will go on pre-order in July. So the Orc Army box. So we won't be, unlike, I know we kind of talked about this, I think, in a previous show, but I think a lot of people were hoping maybe that they would sneak, we'd get kind of sisters fairly soon, and that, you know, Thousand Suns and Orcs and Grey Knights would come out kind of very quickly. But it sounds like the Army box, which is going to be a limited box, just like the Sisters one was in previous days, is going to go on pre-order in July, which I'll assume is going to be the only place to get the codex for a little while.
For which? For Sisters?
For orcs. Remember how they did a Sisters box, like, I think right when they did the original release, and it had the codex in it, and it was kind of like the only way to get the codex for a few months, and then the codex and like the rest of the set come out later. Well, that army, they're essentially doing the same thing for orcs, and that book is going to be coming out, or the box is going to be going on pre-order in July. They confirmed that today, and the rest will be coming out later.
I don't know. Their whole release schedule is just bizarre right now. So just please give me new rules for everything. Keep pushing them out. I am looking at the Shooting Boy right now, and I think it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
It's a little less gorilla. It's a little less hunchback.
Yeah. They're not like they're not Quasimodos.
Yeah.
All right. So next topic. Let's talk GW's rule pack for the event. And so Games Workshop today released their rules pack for the Warhammer essentially US Open circuit. And I'm not going to pull them up yet, but I will kind of go through some of the topics and I guess things that I want to discuss, which I thought were interesting. So just a few things to note. I did get confirmation today from Mike Brandt that they will be using BCP at this event, which is great. I'm always a proponent of using tools that are available. I think a lot of us were fearing that maybe Games Workshop would be apprehensive about bringing in like a third-party program, because you got to remember, the last time Games Workshop did events, BCP didn't exist. That's how long it's been since they've done events. The Battlescribe didn't exist. Those were the days of like, what was it called? Was it Army Builder? That was probably like way back when. It's called Army Builder, I think. And like some of those really old school army building software. But so we did get confirmation that the events are going to be running BCP. Another interesting thing is that there's 8 games, and there's basically, so there's 3 on Friday, 3 on Saturday, and 2 on Sunday. So we talked a little bit about last week's show as well on Best Overall. I talked a little bit about number of games and events and how the new meta as far as game number has been increasing. So I think a few years ago, and I've had this bit of a fight with, I've been having this fight with Dan Miner, a local TO, about the number of games at AttackX, which I've been strongly advocating for 6 games. And, you know, I've had a lot of the Hammerhead dudes and kind of general drunks in Vancouver who are strong influences on Dan, telling him not to run 6 games. And I've been kind of complaining, but I'll be happy that I just get to play an event. And, you know, I kind of brought up the fact that, you know, 5 games was, you know, 2018 season, 2019 even was more 6. I pushed for 6 games at that event, but we're now in 2021. So for me, 6 games is the bare minimum, especially for anything larger than 64 players. It just makes sense. But we're also seeing a lot of events like the FLG tournaments and the GW events now go to 8 games, 8 to 9 games. So what do you think of this kind of new, I guess, frontier where now to play in a super major, a large major, you're needing Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off? Do you think it's going to be a detriment, or do you think it's a good thing?
No, it's fine. Those of us that have to travel had to take 4 or 5 days off anyway. Like, it doesn't matter if it's just Saturday, Sunday. I still had to take Friday off, Monday off, probably Thursday as well. Like, screw it. What's one more day?
Yeah, I agree.
I'm only doing this once or twice a year, maybe 3 times, or, you know, a madman like you, 17. Yeah, it's not a big deal. My issue is depending on the number of people, if 8 is like too many. Like, obviously they needed the 8 or 9 or whatever they had for the 256 that we had. But I mean, they didn't even need that. They only needed 8 because we had a top 8 cut and there was 4 undefeated at the end of 6. So you could have just had 2 more rounds and then you would have finished at 256. If they happen to have one that's only like 200 or like 180 people, 8 rounds might be overkill.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think 8 games feels about right. So the first 6 games are going to follow the old Nova format. So essentially you're going to play 3 games, and then after the 3 games, you'll be sorted into brackets of 16 players. And then for the remaining 3 games, you'll play within that 16-player bracket. So what that means essentially, and this is something that is really important for people to understand, is if you say go 2-1 on day 1, and you're say sorted into the 3rd bracket, right? Then the highest you can place, even if you win your next 3 games, is 33rd, because the 2 brackets of 16 ahead of you are locked. So you can never go up a bracket, which means if you don't go essentially 3-0 on the day 1, even if you finish the event 5-1, the most you can, the highest you can finish is wherever you place in that bracket. So if you end up in the 3rd bracket, it's going to be 33rd place, because it's going to be 16, 16, and then the next place. If it's say you end up in the 2nd bracket, the highest place you can end up at 16. So you end up with a weird situation where your 16th place player could be 3-3, and your 17th place player can be 5-1. So what do you think of that format? Because that for me, I've never liked that. I do like this idea of the brackets, but the fact that say I play Brad Chester game 2 and I lose, but then I win all the rest of my games, I'm locked now at the top of whatever bracket I'm in. Whereas if say someone gets a lucky win path, say they have 3 easy matchups day 1, which is very possible, that happens all the time in events, and they end up in bracket 1, and then they get just creamed by all the top players, and they end up 3-3, they're still going to finish ahead of me. Right? That doesn't feel right to me. That feels very like, I don't know. There's something about that doesn't sit right.
I kind of like the way they cut it off at Atlantic. Like after 6 games, like yes, you could have got there from a somewhat easy path, but it's fairly unlikely at that point.
Right. Well, I think the other thing with that I liked about the Atlantic City Open, and this is the big thing, guys, half the top 8 had lost the game. But because they got in that top 8, they were actually still in a winning position of that tournament because it's single elimination after that. So your record actually really doesn't matter. So all you had to do is win 3 more games and you win the whole event. So even though you lost a game, if you scored enough battle points, if you did well in all the other games enough, you could still potentially win the whole event. So there's something I actually really like about that, because one of the things that I've always said is I like the sometimes I don't like the fact that, you know, and if you look at Nick Nanavati, for instance, in his first 6, he actually lost to Brad Chester. Now it was like coincidence that he also lost to Brad Chester, but in the end, but he lost to one of the top players at the event, and he managed to still get in that top 8, and then still managed to go and then lose to Brad Chester again. But say Brad Chester hadn't been in the final, and it was say like I don't know, Richard Siegler, and then he beats Richard Siegler. So in that, like, then you have a situation where even though someone lost to like one of the top players, they're not necessarily out of the tournament just because they had an unlucky matchup early in the event. Whereas in this kind of Nova style format that the GW events are running, that's not possible. Once you're kind of out of that top bracket, you're completely out basically.
Yeah, I think what ACO did was a good compromise, like a good walk the line of rewarding consistency.
Yeah.
And also not screwing over the people that made it to the top.
Absolutely.
Because again, I don't know how many times I've made it to a top table, lost on the top table. Of course, I've had the hardest run, so I've been grinding out like low point wins, and then I end up like 8th, or like I'm talking at like a 64 player tournament. So instead of being 1st or 2nd, I lose that last game, which of course was probably the hardest game, and I've had a hard run the whole way through, and now suddenly I'm like upper middle of the pack, and it felt really bad. So again, that's not a reward for consistency. So I like what ACO did, because it really is like kind of finding the middle ground between both.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully, GW. I mean, I don't think they're going to change it, obviously, and this is obviously locked in for the first 3 events. But I think there's still a chance that after these events, they do take a bit of feedback. Another thing that I want to point out from the pack is that obviously there's a very, very strict model rule, and there's been a lot of stupid takes. And I'm going to call up my very good friend who I admire deeply, Don Husen, on this, who has gone and created a total shitstorm in competitive 40K, basically claiming that this now means that you have to use Games Workshop glue and Games Workshop paint on your models, because otherwise that's essentially part of the model, and they have to be 100% Games Workshop models. And I just think that's absolutely ridiculous. That's an absolutely ridiculous take, Don, and you know it, and you're just being ridiculous. And I think anyone with common sense knows that's not what they mean. What they're trying to do is say 2 things. A, if you want to play as Dark Angels, your army can't look like Ultramarines, which I think is actually perfectly legit. And it's one of the reasons that I always advocate in creating your own color schemes. So my Soul Drinkers, one of the benefits of playing Soul Drinkers is they have no known chapter. So I can play them as whatever the fuck I want. No issues, right? So that's why custom schemes are really important. If you want to be a competitive player, do not paint your army as Dark Angels and then try to and have like Dark Angels bits and Dark Angels emblems and then try to run them as Ultramarines, because I actually agree with that rule. Second, the models all have to be official Games Workshop models, no third-party bits. But I don't now whether or not I agree with that is so here's the thing. I want third-party bits and models. Am I surprised that in a Games Workshop official sanctioned event where they're going to be, it's their event run by them, that they require Games Workshop only models, I'm not surprised. Like, I don't think anyone is surprised by that. So what are your thoughts on those two, I guess, points? What do you think of that? Because this whole thing of, oh, it needs to be Games Workshop glue is just, it's just like, I don't know, it's just like complete nonsense. And I just think that Don's being like a shit disturber, basically trying to kind of create drama when none exists. Everyone knows what they're talking about. It seems it's very clear. And even Mike Brandt piped in saying, no, there's no such rule exists. You're being absurd, but he's on a crusade about it. So I guess, what are your thoughts, Alex?
Well, he's also on a crusade that objective secured isn't necessary, so we can just allow him to be incorrect.
Yeah.
I would say that, okay, obviously the glue thing is ridiculous. Maybe paints, but that even seems pretty stupid to me. I don't even like the fact that it's a 100% GW model. I like the old one that they used to do. Even I think this was at GW, like at Ard Boys, when it was their own tournaments, where it was like your model had to be 75% GW.
Yeah.
That's fine. It means you had to go and buy the model. Like, it means you used most of the model. You went out and bought their product. Like, it's not like you bought the models and then didn't put the arms on, and you've somehow like screwed GW out of their money. Do 75%. Put on a cool custom spear from another game or whatever, and just leave it at that. Or like even just non-GW bases even. Like, you can put that shit on anything. You put that shit on cardboard if you really feel like it. Just make it look cool.
Right.
So seems super overkill to me.
Yeah, I mean, look, I get it. Like, I think it's I think there has to be flexibility, and my real question always with this stuff is like, how hard are they really going to enforce it? Like, are they going to come around and look at every head, every arm, every weapon to make sure that it's Games Workshop standard? Or if at a distance it looks mostly like Games Workshop standard? Like, I have random shoulder pads on my like army that are not Games Workshop. I have like chapter symbols. I have weapons here and there scattered throughout that are not Games Workshop. So are they going to come around and look at that and basically demand that I not use those models? I don't think so. I think if someone shows up with, say, a whole army of Cromlech orcs, or someone shows up with a whole army of 3D printed models, or someone shows up with, say, an army that's very clearly heavily not Games Workshop, or toys, or any of that other bullshit, I think they'll definitely do something. But I think for the most part, if someone's army has bits throughout, right, then I don't think that's going to be like trigger this thing. And as long as it looks like it's a GW army made by GW, I don't think that. Now, I could be totally wrong, and they could be complete bits Nazis about it, and we could find out that at Orlando, the first one, the judges went around and literally disqualified people's armies based on finding like a power sword from Cromlech in there, or some heads from Liber Demonica, or any of these other 3D printers. Like, that could actually happen, and I will take back my words. I just don't think that's what I think. What they're trying to do is kind of write a blanket policy and hope that for the most part 90% of the models are GW, and that it looks like Games Workshop. And yeah, if someone has like a bit here or there, third-party doors for their Rhino, whatever, I don't think they're going to come down with the hammer and smash them. Now, I don't know if they're going to be streaming these games. They haven't mentioned any talk of streaming, but obviously if they stream stuff, maybe they get a little stricter on it. Who knows? But yeah, I just don't see that. Now, again, I could be wrong, and Don could be totally right. They could come in and grab a DNA test and see if, with that swab, and see if the thing is GW formulated paint and your super glue and stuff. I think that's ridiculous. Or they could just be very strict on individual bits. If they spot a bit, a head, a shoulder pad, or whatever that is in Games Workshop, they could potentially be super anal about it. Again, I feel strongly that someone like Mike is not going to enforce this at this like extreme level, considering he is a seasoned TO with very familiar with the scene. And I think if he does end up doing that, if they do end up going full, super Nazi on the bits, I think that's going to actually be super detrimental to these events in the future for a lot of players. I think people just won't come. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. Yeah,
if they're crushingly heavy-handed at the first event, and they like ban a bunch of armies, no one's showing up to the second event.
Yeah,
because you have to understand, like, what are you gonna do? Well, you can't play at our event. Okay, cool. Are you gonna pay me my fucking ticket back? My aircraft, like, I flew here. I've spent $1,000. You giving me that shit back because I've got one head that's not right? Like, if those stories get out, if that happened, even if they're not super heavy-handed, even if they do it like twice, and people are like, yeah, I was out $1,000. I didn't get to go to the event. I had like 2 modifications, and they kicked me out. like I think the community will rightfully throw a shit fit, and no one will show up to the next one.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
All right, and then a few other things to quickly touch on. They will be doing active judging, which I think is great. I've always advocated for active judging. I think if you're running an event and you're too pussy to fucking step in and stop people from cheating, you're a pussy basically. So I definitely think people should be actively judging. I think that's just basic. I do think that now one thing I did want to bring up, and ladies and gentlemen, sit down, grab your cup of tea, because we're going to get into a little bit of drama in relation to this format. And I'm going to tell you a story. So I want you guys to close your eyes and take yourselves back to 2 years ago, Nova 2019. And in this pack, there's a rule that says, under scoring, it says, once you submit your scores, they cannot be changed. If you and your opponent discover a scoring error after submission, the default stance of judges is there will be no change. Now, I thought to myself, that's an interesting rule. I wonder, and I'm going to put it up on the screen here, so hopefully you guys can see it. Here we go. So here's the rule, if you guys can see it on screen. And I thought, well, that was really interesting. And that reminds me of something that happened to me at Nova in 2019. And this is something that, and I actually messaged, I threw on the various message boards that I'm part of. I said, hey, Mike, this is the gym vessel clause you must have thrown in. Sorry for the shit show at Nova 2019. In jest, and understanding that, you know, I kind of thought after the situation that I caused at Nova 2019 that he threw this rule in as the gym vessel clause. And many people don't know what happened at Nova 19, or many people have an incorrect account of the facts. And so in order to clear the air, I want to give a quick summary of exactly what happened. And I'm going to call out one James Kelling, who was my opponent of this game. And James, I have no ill will towards you, except tell the fucking truth because you're a fucking liar. And just be honest about what happened. But basically what happened is in our game at Nova, he took secondaries that he could not. And I didn't discover till after the game that he had doubled up secondary. So imagine taking, for instance, in 9th edition, imagine taking thin your ranks and another kill secondary, right? And then not like whose job is it to check your secondaries? Is it yours or your opponent's? It's yours. That's your responsibility to take the correct secondaries, right? And what happened was he took these secondaries. They were, and then he put it something to the score. I didn't catch it at that moment, but then slightly after, I realized that the secondaries were incorrect, and I messaged him. And here on the screen is my message. I said, and I want everyone to read this along with me, because I have receipts, you fuckers, as usual. So what did I say? I said, hey, James, I realize you scored the mission incorrectly. You can't combo call the hordes on troops and mark for death, which you did by taking the 4 troop units for mark for death, which means you actually would score 3 less. I thought that was very polite. I sent him a snapshot of the rules, and then I said I talked to Phil, who was the TO, and he said if it's true, then we can get the score swapped. Sorry, but I knew there was something up at the end with the scoring, and I just forgot about the interaction. It sounds like you did too. This was at 6:40, August 30th. 8 is August 30th, 2019. So this was immediately following our game. I sent him this message. Very nice. I was like, hey, good dude, I realized that you screwed up on your scores, and you essentially cheated. You doubled up on secondaries, and you won the game by 4 points. By 3 points, or 2 points. I think you won by 2 points, and you should have had 3 points less. So assuming that we correct this error, I actually win the game. Now, we've had this conversation before, and I've had this conversation on Politics and Plastic, which is when you make a mistake in a game, whether you write a list that's 5 points over, or you illegally score points that you shouldn't have, or you do something that is against the rules, then the proper course of action is to recognize that you made a mistake and then do everything you can to correct the mistake. So you go to the TO and you say, hey, my list is 5 points over. So just like John Lennon did a few tournaments ago, where he discovered his list was 5 points over, what did he do? He dropped from the event. So the thing that someone would do with integrity is when they realize they've made a mistake, they would fess up that, yeah, I screwed up. I shouldn't have double scored my secondaries. And you're right, I should have gotten those points. And so let's fix that. That's what any good TO would like once. And I did it as immediately when I found out. So this wasn't 2 days later. I didn't try to ambush him in the morning or anything like that. I literally sent him the message. I just showed you guys the message. And the next morning he showed up and tried to pretend that I was trying to, behind his back, and that's what he's claimed in public, that I behind his back was trying to get the scores changed, and that I basically told the TOs a false narrative. Literally, after the game was, he'd already gone off. I reviewed our scores. I realized it was a mistake. I messaged him right away. I said, hey, I talked to Phil to say, hey, what should we do? Phil said, hey, look, if this mistake was made, talk to James, and then let's get the scores fixed. But instead, there's all this conversation of how me, the person that didn't cheat, the person that didn't fuck up their scores, somehow screwed over James. So I didn't score over James. You screwed over James. James screwed up over James. And so what I would say to someone like that is have a little fucking bit of integrity. Admit that you made the mistake, and that just because I caught it doesn't mean that I'm the bad guy. Because the way that you conducted yourself was someone with zero integrity and zero honesty. And he just needs to understand that. Now, he can go ahead and say whatever he wants to his teammates that want to drag my name into the mud. But I know if those roles were reversed, I would have been like, yeah, that was my fuck up. I'm sorry. I will take the loss. Like, that is what the right thing to do. And instead, James made a huge hissy fit, tried to like blame me, tried to accuse me of like fixing the game, all sorts of other nonsense, when literally, and in the morning, guess what? The TOs agreed with me. They were like, yeah, you did fuck up. You did make a mistake. And just because Jim called you out doesn't mean that Jim's the bad guy. And, you know, Mike was really pissed off because I put him in a super shitty situation. He was like, that's why I kind of jokingly said to him the Jim Vessel clause when this pack came out, because Mike was pissed off that I put him in a difficult situation where he had to literally change someone's win to a loss. They had to like, and the thing is too, the pairings already hadn't been posted. And I got to the judges really early, like literally it was 15 minutes after our game. And I was like, hey, I just realized my opponent made a mistake in the scoring and I should have won the game. So it wasn't like, it was like 2 rounds later or like after pairings are up. Like literally the fix was really easy. They could have just literally fixed those scores. And had that been, you know, the next round, I would have just been like, okay, it's too late. But knowing that there was an easy fix to his mistake, I thought the honorable thing to do and the right thing to do is get that mistake fixed. But instead, now 2 years later, his teammates and himself tried to drag me through the mud again 2 years later. Like, dudes, get the fuck over it. I ended up losing a game 6 anyways, and you ended up losing a bunch of your games anyways. So I don't give a fuck what you think anymore, but just get the fuck over it and stop being such a like spineless coward about it and just be honest about it. Because that's literally your mistake. It wasn't my mistake. It was your mistake. And just admit it. Just admit that you made a mistake and let's move on with our lives. All right.
As a neutral person, I also would have just taken the loss. I would actually have felt very guilty about somebody coming to me later and being like, hey, you literally picked illegal secondaries. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't mean to. I forgot about the interaction. I'm so sorry. Let's get the scores changed right away.
Yeah,
that is what my reaction would be, and that is the correct action.
I played in the WTC matches in Greek Hammer, which is a big, very important WTC event recently. And that happened to me, where I took Spread the Sickness on my Death Guard in a mixed Death Guard list, and then realized afterwards that I can only take those faction secondaries if I have a pure list. Literally, as soon as I found out, I messaged the opponent, I messaged the team captain, and I messaged the TO, and I said, hey, I just realized this. I screwed up. I shouldn't have these points. And he wins the game by these X amount of points or whatever. Like, that's the right thing to do. That's what someone with integrity does, and that's what someone that's honest does. What someone who's dishonest and someone that has no integrity is, they make a huge deal out of it, they whine, and then pretend that it's the opponent's fault that they screwed up. That's like the worst reaction, and it just shows poor sportsmanship and just lack of integrity or lack of honesty. And he should feel ashamed that he's still trying to sell this false narrative that I'm somehow trying to screw him. I literally just showed you guys the message that I sent him, 6:40. So this was literally like, I think the game maybe ended like 40 minutes before that. And I spent, it took me 15 minutes to discover it. And then I tracked down Phil, the TO. I chatted with him for like 15 minutes. And then I looked for James for a little while, couldn't find him. So I ended up messaging him on Facebook. So go check your DMs, bud. Anyways.
Yes. What are we up to now?
All right.
Questions?
So that is some tea. Any other thoughts on the no other thoughts on the I guess I just want to talk last thing about terrain layout at the ACO at the event. They posted terrain maps, which is amazing. So kudos to Games Workshop. I think that's a really cool advancement of our like hobby, that it's like we get terrain maps. What do you think of the terrain maps on this? Do you think that it looks about right? Do you think it's too light? It actually looks like more terrain than the fucking FLG events, to be honest.
Yeah, I would have to find them again. You sent me the pack. Yeah, it's what are these? Large ruin, terrain pieces, area terrain, scalable, breachable, light cover, obscuring, defensible. Yeah, I mean they look pretty solid. Obviously these are going to be just some level of interpretation. I would assume, because those are very like, here is square box, like again and again. But I mean, if I got that table as a Tyranid player, I'd be pretty happy.
Yeah, I think they look solid. I mean, we'll see. I think Mike Brandt also mentioned that they're going to be showing some actual pictures of the terrain down the road, so they can actually like show like here's the actual terrain pieces, not just a map.
The dense cover in the corners is a little weird.
Yeah, that's the only thing that I thought was weird. It seems kind of like I don't know why it's
That's-
there. It's just like they should have
Never
moved that
gonna
stuff to the
affect
middle.
anything ever.
Exactly. All right, let's get into viewer questions. So we got a few viewer questions today. Let me pull them up here. Now, if you guys are in chat, now would be the time to place your questions into chat. All right. So let's start with Ramiel from Discord. So he basically, I'm going to summarize his question because it's very long. Basically, he's bringing up the fact that we talked about an ELO system, and he would like to hear us talk about ELO scores in general and about the potential to mitigate the handicap of taking a bad faction or the advantage of taking a good one. So I guess to summarize this question, he's wondering, should there be adjustments to the kind of ELO scoring to account for bad or good factions? And I actually think there should be. There could be some sort of like, I guess, modifier based on like your faction score. Now, ELO basically, you know, when I talk about ELO, I'm generally referring to a set of style of rating system. I'm not talking about the actual ELO exactly as written in the ELO handbook. There's obviously a lot of systems that are similar to ELO that essentially are ranked, give you scores based on your opponent. Now, do you think there should be some sort of modifiers to these systems if you're playing a certain faction where, like, for instance, like if say two people have 1,000 points, they're exact same, and I beat their, let's say, Space Marine list with my guard, I would get more points than if they beat my Space Marines with if they beat my guard with their Space Marines. Basically, I get handicapped.
Yeah, I could see that working out pretty well. You could also do where you just like split it, where it's like this is your ranking within a certain faction, kind of like we do now. So you can tell, and then maybe you just average it. Like this person's rating is whatever it is in Marine, and it's this in Guard. You know, they're kind of near the top of both of those piles, and then you can kind of like do a differential between the two. That sounds like a lot of math, though. So maybe it's just better to just have like, we'll let Peter do that too. We'll let Stat Center have like the win rates of armies and have that as a modifier to how hard it is to accomplish a win with certain factions. You know,
Yeah.
You take a GT with Drukari and it gives you almost nothing. You win a GT with GSC, you get like first place.
Yeah, I do think there should be some sort of system like that. Now, I think the hard part is what that looks like. So do I, like, if we could create a perfect system, right? Then yeah, I definitely want that. What I don't want to do is that where that part of the system, so that specific aspect of it essentially ends up being like a comp system of some kind where people then find the best faction to handicap ratio. So say I play the third best army, and that's in a sweet spot where even if I win, it actually gives me a lot more points than say someone that won with the best army. So it has to be weighted in a way where I still get more points for winning, but I get slightly more, like, a bit of a bonus for winning with a harder faction. And that bonus can't be so big that it discourages people to take the top armies because they get no bonus, for instance, right?
Yeah, and that's a very nebulous decision to make, and no one will ever be happy with it, unfortunately.
Yeah, like, I mean, let's
I lose to Guard all the time, so it doesn't matter that they're bad.
Exactly.
Like, you know that forever.
Yeah, and if you asked any one person the top 2 armies, the top 10 armies, the top 30 armies, they'll probably get a lot of different answers. So how do we actually judge that is really difficult to answer. So in a kind of utopian world where we could figure that out very objectively, I would love a system like that. Practically and realistically, could we actually implement that in a way that feels fair and accurate, and also that's constantly updated based on faction changes, terrain changes? Like, think about AdMech versus Drukari. Well, depending on the table, if you're playing on a WTC table versus an FLG table, you might say on the WTC table that Drukari have the advantage, but on the FLG table, the AdMech are the better faction. So how do you balance things like that? So there's just a lot of complication there, which I think is a bit of a Pandora's box. But yeah, ideally we could do something like that. All right, from the chat, Discord chat, we have a question from blah blah blah. Trendy Love, you guys buy your tickets to any of the GW tourney? No, because I'm in Canada, and I have been flirting with the idea of maybe after Charity Hammer, instead of coming home, flying down to Florida and then flying for the Orlando event because it's the following weekend, and then going from there. But I don't know if I'm ready for that level of like travel and tournament going. And the other thing too, I've been thinking, I'm like, it's kind of like pointless given the season is already a wash for me. So spending a bunch of money on far flung tournaments doesn't really appeal to me outside of like LVO, for instance. Just because I'm not competing for anything. It's just an event to go to. With that said, it would be really fun I talked to Siegler today, and I was like, if I come to Florida, can I come hang out at the house and stream with you guys? And he was like, yeah, for sure. No problem. So that sounds kind of fun, is do kind of like a Florida trip, hang out at the Art of War Trap House, and then heading out to Orlando for the Warhammer event. But also, I have a lot of third-party stuff for my army, so maybe I won't go. Raymond Stubb asks, and I assume this is for you, Alex, are Dimacarians still a must-have for Tyranids?
Not anymore. They went up in points, which is probably unnecessary. We had this conversation before about like they're in every army, so they get nerfed, but it's just because it's all we had left. They are still okay at 255. I obviously don't think they needed the nerf, but it's not about the change to Dimacarians. It's the change to the rest of the meta, and the fact that every AdMech army is running like 6 Last Chickens, and every Dark Eldar army is running 5 to 6 Raiders, which means they'll just scoop your Dimacarians forever unless you're on like WTC terrain. So they're basically just a really bad meta call right now. I would still own them. I would still grab them. I don't think they're bad, but they're not what they were. Oh, I can't hear you there, Nick.
Sorry, my mic was muted. Sorry. So okay. Sword Brother Plant asks, do you think changes to super heavy auxiliary detachments will result in more Lords of War being played, or are they generally too much of a points investment ability breaker, i.e. Doctrines, Contingents, or Durgal, to field a competitive army? What do you think? Are we going to see a higher deal in your army anytime soon, Alex?
Lords of War, but I'm not running my Hierophant or Harridan anytime soon.
Yeah.
That much. I could see maybe some. It's not really about the changes to the super heavy auxiliary. I think it's the changes to, it doesn't matter what is the changes to the detachments. It's just, do you have something that you can put in that slot that's actually good? Like, I don't really think it matters about the auxiliary detachment. It's like, do you get to have a Hierophant, or do you get to have like a Megara?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think in general, the super heavies are going to be like, they're just not good enough right now, especially given the terrain. Like, I would not want to be playing a Lord of Skulls on a properly terrained 40k board these days.
Welcome to parking lot. Nothing gets to move ever.
Yeah.
What was the change anyway? I don't even remember.
So basically, in the old battalion set, if you wanted to take a super heavy auxiliary detachment, it was -3 CP. But now it's only I believe it's -1 CP if it's the same faction as your warlord or something like that. Something along those lines. So basically, they've made it so it's a little bit less punishing, taking like a single knight or a single, say, like, I don't know, Lord of War flyer in your list.
Can you make that one where they still get the traits? Because then now we're talking.
No, and that's the thing, is the super heavy don't get a lot of bonuses. So, which I think is a shame, because I think like I liked seeing armies, like I love, the thing, as much as people hated the Castellan list, or like I actually thought it was pretty like fluffy, a bunch of infantry with some chimeras and a few other tanks, and then a big knight to back it up. Like I thought that was like very like, if I saw a guard table on the table or in real life, not that I would, that is what I would expect to see, is like kind of small, medium, and large. All right, we have a question from Hill42H, I think. So the question is if you had to start from scratch with one army, what would it be? And it can't be Chaos or Tyranids for Alex.
Well, I know the answer to that. It would be Sisters. I have like, 500 points of Sisters in my house. I just think they're cool. I like stuff that is just like worshipping like fire and Melta and stuff. It just is pretty funny to me. Like if I was going to play Marines, I would play Salamanders.
Yeah. All right. White Turk asks, oh yeah, I should have answered the question. I think for me, I've always wanted to do a Eldar list, Eldar army, sorry, but I can't because the models aren't up to date. So as soon as we see like a fully re-sculpted Eldar line, like warriors, all the new avatar, all that stuff, once we see that Eldar release, then I will definitely do an Eldar army because I've always liked. I mean, it checks a lot of boxes for me. So I'll definitely probably do an Eldar army. Obviously, I was very tempted to do Drukhari because they also tick a lot of boxes for me, but I didn't want to jump on that bandwagon, and I still have some chaos projects to work on. All right, Why Turk asks, no outside drinks at the GW events, and he's really wondering how, if he can't play my Baja Blast Grey Knights and give out complimentary ice cold dews to my opponent, what's the point? I don't know why. What is the point? I definitely wouldn't go if you can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, does outside drinks, does that mean like you're not allowed to walk outside to the bar and grab a drink that's being supplied there and bring it inside? Like, I don't know. No, I think it's stupid that they're doing like food policies as well.
Yeah,
that's probably just couch hopping to the hotel that they are renting out.
To be fair though, I don't think the LVO allows outside drinks. You can't show up with like a 6-pack from the liquor store. Like you have to buy drinks from them. So that's not a surprise that at a kind of hotel resort venue or whatever they're doing these events, there's no outside drinks. Flasks still exist, guys, and if you're smart, you'll have one. And just make your own Baja Blast drinks. All right. By Lemon asks, hey guys, would love to hear your thoughts on ACO training and how you think this will impact FLG events moving forward. I think we answered that already. And question for me is, what did you think of the game against Gary? So for those of you that don't know, I had my Play on Tabletop premiere on Tuesday against Gary Sacco, and I lost. So spoiler alert, by like 2 or 3 points, I can't remember. And did you think, looking back, you made many mistakes? Yeah, like I made a ton of mistakes, and I'm actually going to be doing a kind of react video with Gary shortly. I'm hoping to maybe do that later this week, maybe on Thursday night. But basically, I was very out of practice, and it was a lot of mistakes made on my part. That's probably the 4th game of real life 40k I've played in as many like times as like the 2nd time I played Dark Angels. I just was very rusty, and yeah, like you forget a lot of stuff. I made really dumb tactical errors. I played like I was playing 8th edition. Like I forgot the whole character thing. I had characters running around in the open. He was able to snipe all these characters because I forgot they have to be in 3 inches of units. Like just in general, I just made a lot of mistakes, and it was my game to lose, and I definitely lost that game. And yeah, I'm still learning 9th, guys. Like the truth is that I haven't played as much 9th as I should, and I'm still gonna be making lots of mistakes and still figuring out kind of some of the nuances of the game. And I think that's pretty standard for anyone that has kind of been in lockdown. I think I mentioned last time I played 4 real life games, and I have 60 hours or so of TTS, which is like 8 games, given how long those games take. So Burster75 asks, can a table ever have too much terrain? Alex?
Yeah, it can. I think sometimes the WTC terrain gets a little too hard. Like I realize that the level of terrain on any table from light to heavy, all it really does is change the meta. But eventually it gets to the point where you feel like, why am I even bringing some of these units? And we're talking like standard units. Like, hey, Dark Reapers are pretty good. Well, they're not really great when all you ever get to shoot is the Exarch with the Tempest Launcher. And certain things become far too strong. Like I think one of the reasons that the Demacarian got nerfed is that they were keeping track of a lot of the WTC stuff, and in WTC with like 8 L's on the table, yeah, Demacarians are actually busted because their one downside of being 18 wounds doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I don't have anything to add. Baker72 asks, White Death Guard painting video when? I said at the start of the show it'll be out on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Hold me to that because I'm deep in the editing process, so I'm working on that. Trendy Love asks, Jim, are you seeing any edge with being able to summon in Death Guard without losing faction trios? Honestly, I bought myself a Epidemus. I don't know why, because I figured maybe there's a list there that I can kind of work him into like a Death Guard demon engine list where just Epidemus floating around and then it gives buffs to all demon engines, but I haven't really spent a ton of time on it.
Can you summon the tree now?
Yeah, I can summon the tree. I can summon Horticulx, whatever his name is, Slimix dude, Slugman, yeah. And then have it throw a tree in there. Peter Dunn. Yeah. So one of the things I was thinking of is maybe having summoning a Poxwalker into like Mortarion list so that he can heal Mortarion. Because he with Fleshy, I think it's called Fleshy Abundance as a spell. he can heal Mortarion, and then also give some other buffs there. Peter Dunn asks, what secondaries do you think Harlequin, specifically Soaring Spite, post chapter proved? That's hard to say. I mean, besides probably like engaging all fronts, because you're kind of going to be in all the corners, it's really hard to say. A lot of it depends on how you build your list, what you're playing, who you're playing. I'd probably say you're pretty safe with things like fucking Octarius coordinates, or whatever the hell it's called, the new scramblers, and
Harlequins are just faster, better GSC with all the tricks that GSC used to have. So play them like GSC. You can deep strike, you can run super quick and get 2 objectives and corners and your table quarters for deploying banners or the scramblers and stuff. Yeah. I agree with what you're saying.
So engaging all fronts and the new scramblers, as I'm going to call it, is probably safe bets in most games. For the rest, I think it probably depends on your opponent and what you're playing. All right, I think that's the last question. Let me just make sure that is. Yeah, I think that's the last question. So thanks everyone for listening. It's been a great episode. Sorry for my, well, not sorry. Fuck you guys. That that made me mad. But I hope you guys appreciated my rant and my honesty. If you guys want to find you, Alex, where can they find you?
Art of War Discord. I'm in the BiffPod Discord as well. There's most places they can find me.
So Alex, the Discord or
Discord King, maybe.
Yeah, and guys, just make sure to leave a like, comment, or whatever on the video if you'd like. Subscribe to the channel. I now have, or soon to have YouTube memberships, because I've now part of the YouTube Partner Program. So if you guys are feeling generous, feel free to throw me some your Bezos bucks on Twitch, or join the or throw a super chat in, or even if you want to support the channel, join as a member on the YouTube. So that'll be shortly enabled. And Death Guard video 6 p.m. on Wednesday. With that said,
Wednesday.
6 p.m. I have it actually set as a premiere on that day, so it's gonna go up one way or another. So with that said, it's been Competitive Corner. Alex, thanks so much, and we will check you guys on Thursday.